How often does it happen that a player catches the attention of a very illustrious former player due to a viral video compilation, who then goes on to suggest that this player should go on to represent his country of birth, only for said player in question to very publicly shoot down that option? If this sounds like something surreal, believe you me, it was something that actually played out rather publicly on social media, and it involved this man in question, Yan Dhanda. Now, Yan Dhanda is already someone who's, let's say he's part of football infamy or fame in England, because he's an Indian origin player who at one point was part of Liverpool's academies and has now gone on to play for Swansea City and is currently in the Scottish club of Ross County, where he has really impressed. However, any suggestion of him being able to play for India was shot down by none other than Yan Dhanda himself. And in case you're wondering who the other people were, well, let's just figure out how exactly this went and why it is that Yan Dhanda's case has actually led to a lot of deliberation as to whether or not India should change their rules when it comes to players of Indian origin being able to represent their countries. It started off when Rio Ferdinand, the Manchester United and England legend, came across a video compilation online and subtweeted it with the simple caption, "Love it, Yan Dhanda." Surely, he then tagged the Indian football's Twitter account as well as India's head coach Igor Stimac, India's AIFF President Kalyan Chaubey, and Shaji Prabhakaran, who also holds a very powerful position in the AIFF. So far so good, very good suggestion from Rio Ferdinand that Yan should be representing his country of birth, given he would obviously be able to make an impact of some sort. In response, Shaji Prabhakaran took to Twitter to respond to Rio's tweet saying, "Dear Rio, thank you. It would be our pleasure to welcome Yan to the Indian national team if he is willing to apply for an Indian passport by moving to India. His challenge would be to relinquish his current nationality, but it will be worth it as he can quickly emerge as a hero of 1.4 billion people." Again, so far so good. Sounds like one hell of a sales pitch from Shaji Prabhakaran, which would make sense considering Yan Dhanda comes with two things: plenty of skill and also plenty of attention from the world at large. So you're thinking, okay, win-win situation really as far as the Indian team are concerned. They're getting some good publicity and they're welcoming back someone of Indian origin who, let's be fair, would actually probably jump at the chance of being able to represent his country of birth. However, hold your horses, because Yan Dhanda came across this entire thread and chose to respond to it himself. He replied to it by saying, "Giving up my passport means I can't play professionally in the UK and for some European clubs due to India's FIFA ranking. Permitting OCI cards similar to other countries will allow me to represent the Indian football team as a dual national. I hope this can happen soon." And OCI, in case you're wondering, stands for the Overseas Citizenship of India. Now, OCIs is a thing that does exist. They're of course one step higher than an NRI. Whilst NRIs are Indians who live abroad, OCIs are overseas citizens who will have a little bit more in terms of rights, although they won't have stuff like voting rights. So he said that if you allow OCI card holders to play for India, I would be able to realize my dream without actually giving up my UK passport. And he gives some very valid reasons as to why he probably shouldn't do it. Because if he does, due to India's rather lowly ranking, we're still now nowhere near the top 100, and even if we were in the top 100, wouldn't make much of a difference. He would not be permitted to be playing in Europe and the UK due to India's low ranking. Those are the rules that currently exist. So, interesting point, you'd think, but interestingly, there are, of course, there is one player in recent times who chose to make the jump, who was a player of Indian origin, chose to leave behind his country of birth and has now come to India. We'll get to him in just a bit, but before, as you can tell here, there's some things that need explaining. So why is it that Yan Dhanda, despite being of Indian origin, can't participate for the Indian football team? Pretty simple really, because when it comes to India's rules on, say, NRIs or people who are even born of Indian origin, who have lived or born and have had families living in other countries for generations, the rules are pretty simple. Dual citizenship holders are not allowed, and this is something, by the way, that's not true just for the Indian team, but it's true for India as a country as well. Dual citizenship is not something that is in fact permitted. You either have Indian citizenship or you have citizenship of the other country that you are from. That is why if you are a non-resident Indian or an OCI, whichever category you fall into, you need to be taking up Indian citizenship, and that means giving up your passport of the country which you're currently holding. So in Yan Dhanda's case, he'd have to give up his UK passport, and this is something that, by the way, has proved prohibitive in the past, because a lot of Indian players, a very popular example being that of Michael Chopra, who never ever got to play for England but would have probably been good enough to play for India. He wanted to play for India. He didn't get a chance to do that because he chose not to give up his UK citizenship. Now, this is obviously something that stands at odds with with the way the international rules work, really, because India is one of few countries that is so strict when it comes to citizenship. We'll get to how and why that's the case in just a bit, but believe it or not, these rules have not stopped certain players from going down the same route. In fact, let's look at the rather curious case of Thriman Ranveer. Now, Thriman Ranveer recently had arrived in India and will be playing the next season of the I-League for Roundhouse Punjab. Now, of course, why exactly this is important is that he was someone who's he's born in Belgium, he's of Indian origin, and he spent a lot of his youth career in a lot of rather popular European clubs, including the likes of Ajax, and was recently playing his club football in Belgium, but he chose to give up his Belgian passport and take up Indian citizenship, because his main dream was to play for the Indian football team. However, the main problem with that was that once he gave up his Indian citizenship, he would not be eligible, or once he gave up his Belgian citizenship, he wouldn't be able to play for any European clubs, because again, it really does come down to India's low FIFA ranking. So that's not to say that it's proved entirely prohibitive, but there have been a lot of players who in fact would have wanted to play for India but did not want to take the step that Thriman Ranveer took. And why exactly is this prohibitive is because in recent times, really, you've seen a lot of instances where countries will open up their borders and allow players of origin of that original country to play for them, even if they're not citizens. If you look at the Morocco team that made it all the way to the semi-finals of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, a lot of those players were not born in Morocco, neither did they necessarily hold Moroccan citizenship. Players like Achraf Hakimi was born in Madrid. He was part of Real Madrid's youth academy, but he was given the option to represent his country of birth and he took it. So a lot of the Moroccan players followed a similar route. They might not have been living in Morocco or even born in Morocco, but due to having Moroccan heritage, they were eligible and they chose to play. In fact, there's many more players who've actually done that. So for instance, Wilfried Zaha, who plays for Crystal Palace, he too is of Ivory Coast descent. He played most of his youth football for England, but having never really gotten an England call-up, he chose to represent the country of his birth, and he's still playing regular football for them. It does happen, and it's really at odds with the general international stance when it comes to getting the best players available of, say, the country's origin into that country's national team, that India are still stuck in the kind of mindset which says, no, you have to have Indian citizenship if you want to play for India. Should the rules change? Absolutely, I certainly agree so. But you may have a different take on it. You can let us know about that in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And last but not least, don't forget to download the SportsTak app. Also, if you're already on the channel, go ahead and check out some other videos that we've done through the day. For now, though, from my side,